Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, October the 6th, 2023. As I keep saying, this channel is not about politics. It's an astrology channel. In a way, I'd like it to be about politics, but really, I don't know enough about politics. You really have to know the details. So when I talk about political subjects, I'm really focusing on the astrology. I'm looking at the astrology of the situation. So that way I can talk about something that I really don't know much about, at least in a political sense, but I can stick to the astrology and hopefully not make a fool of myself. And what I want to talk about today is what's going on in the House of Representatives. So the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, was just voted out. He had to vacate his position. And I want to look at his horoscope. I also want to look at the horoscope of one of the people who engineered his removal. That is Matt Gaetz. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce that name. So I want to look at his horoscope. We have a timed chart for Kevin McCarthy. That's usually the case with people born in California. Matt Gaetz, don't have a time, but I do have a day. So I want to look at his horoscope. I also want to look at the overall astrological position with this sort of chaos in the House of Representatives. It is important because it's all about money. I believe on November the 17th, the United States runs out of money. That sounds a bit glib. Is it really like that? I'm not sure, but there is this cliff that we're approaching, and so something has to happen by November the 17th. So it's a good idea to look at what's going on. The Speaker of the House of Representatives being unseated in this way is a very unusual event. So something must be happening in the US. And I suspect this is connected with America's Pluto Return, which I want to talk about today. I should say, though, in terms of how I describe these events, that in one sense I've got no opinion. I try to be neutral. In another sense, I really understand the frustration of anyone who votes for someone who they regard as going to change the system, is going to stand for a set of principles, and then as soon as they get into power, as soon as they have the office, they just become part of the system. Part of the blob. And so regardless of my own opinions, I can certainly understand why a lot of Republicans are really annoyed with Kevin McCarthy. I mean, he reached out to the other side of the House. He reached out to Democrats and came up with an agreement to provide funding. And that kind of non-partisan behavior is kind of really irritating. I see it in local government. In Washington State, the city council, they all claim to be non-partisan. And non-partisan means you just become part of the system. You just do what you're told. You're flattered by the office. And you basically stop listening to the voters. You stop listening to your constituents. And so, regardless of the chaos that the end of funding, or this the lack of funding or the threat of funding being withdrawn causes, it's you can understand. You can understand why Republicans are frustrated, and particularly if they think that too much money is being spent. Although, on the plus side, there are some advantages potentially of money not being spent. For example, that means less money being spent on sending weapons to the Ukraine, weapons which are contributing mainly to the killing of Ukrainians. These Ukrainians dying for America's proxy war against Russia. So there is some, there is a positive to this, although I think in the end, the money from weapons money always comes through, doesn't it? I mean, that's the way it goes. Anyway, so let's now move to today's astrology and today's I Ching. As I said, later I'll be talking about Kevin McCarthy and Matt Gaetz and the United States chart and other stuff, and also Pluto going stationary direct very soon. So let's move to the astrology, and this is a chart as usual set for noon. Friday, October the 6th, 2023, set for noon in New York. So the main aspect today is a sextile between the moon in Cancer and Jupiter in Taurus. Now, in astrology, sextile is a fortunate aspect. 60 degrees, two signs, you've got, they're two signs apart. So, you've got Jupiter in Taurus, Moon in Cancer, with Gemini in the middle. And Jupiter in Taurus is in the sign of the Moon's exaltation, because the Moon is exalted in Taurus. The Moon, by contrast, is in Cancer, which is a sign of Jupiter's exaltation. So that means that there is a mutual reception by exaltation between the Moon and Jupiter. This is fortunate and this is very lucky. So, the things we do today can work out extremely well. And I'm thinking particularly of dealing with other people, because the Moon in Cancer is, is a receptive sign that is able to tune into other people's feelings. It can be very sort of warm and friendly, particularly when it's sextile Jupiter. And, it can make people, feel at ease. So if we want to get things done today, even if we're being selfish and we're driven by pure ambition, we do have to focus on the human element. And because of this Moon-Jupiter sextile in mutual reception by exaltation, we can really make people feel happy and comfortable, and we're going to have the ability to tune into people's feelings, their likes and dislikes, and so on. So really, I would suggest that you focus on the human element, because it is important. Now, that's not to say that today everything is great. Venus is up here, 28 Leo, and it is making a quincunx 150-degree aspect to Pluto. So, Venus is a planet of relationships, but it's making this rather difficult aspect to Pluto. So, although this Moon-Jupiter sextile is going to really help us get on with other people, understand their feelings, if a relationship gets too close, and you start dealing with heavy emotions, then there could be problems. Pluto is about transformation, it's about intensity, and it's making a difficult aspect to Venus in Leo. Venus in Leo wants everything to be straightforward. Venus in Leo likes being praised, particularly as Venus is starting to approach Regulus, the royal star. Yet Pluto is more complicated. So if you want loads of attention today, you might be disappointed. You might be seen in a way that you're not particularly happy about. But I think it shouldn't be a problem. Just keep it light. By all means, be emotional, but don't get involved with sort of heavy, dark, intense emotion. Not with this Venus quincunx Pluto. So that's the overall position today. I mean, in a way, the astrology is quite simple. I mean, okay, there may be some other stuff going on, but I think it's that Moon Jupiter sextile that really matters, and that sextile will, I think, make it a good day for most of us. So what I'm going to do now is look at the 12 signs for today. So as always, I did my forecast for the 12 signs. So here we go. These are my forecasts for today, which is Friday, October the 6th, 2023. Aries. Today can be nice. The moon is in Cancer, in a secure, home-loving sector of your solar chart, and it makes a pleasant aspect to Jupiter. If you put yourself in the right place, you'll feel comfortable, and there's no need to stress about irrelevant worries. But if you attend to financial matters, even if you don't want to, you could make yourself feel even more comfortable. Taurus. You're in tune with the cosmos, thanks to a wonderful aspect between the moon in Cancer and Jupiter in Taurus. Your fundamental optimism will shine through, and you can make people feel good about themselves. A short journey to somewhere very familiar could have a fortunate outcome. Expect nothing, but be open to everything. Gemini. If you want to play midpoints, it's worth noting that the sign Gemini is wedged by Jupiter in Taurus and the moon in Cancer, because Jupiter is in Taurus, which is the sign before Gemini, and the moon is in Cancer, which is the sign after Gemini. You will feel the beneficial energy of these two planets, and the power of your unconscious can flood into the material realm and bring the gentle changes you yearn for. Partners are there for you, but at their own pace. Cancer. It looks like being a good day. On an emotional level, you feel that you're in the right place, and at the same time, you know how to look after your own interests. And you'll receive a lot of support from other people, with an emphasis on quality rather than quantity. One good friend is worth 1,000 acquaintances. Leo. You can have a powerful influence, but in a roundabout way, being slightly apart from the crowd, but never being entirely ignored. Yes, you're there, even if you can't be seen. And in terms of business, your presence is very real, and your material vision can be inspiring. It allows you to quickly work towards the achievement of your goals. Virgo. You're thinking hard about the future and trying to work out the best way forward. But maybe you're too focused on the plan. A bit of spontaneity would be useful. Let the future unfold at its own pace. You also shouldn't have expectations about other people, and the people who have the most to offer have, in all probability, a very different background from your own. Libra. Libra isn't the most emotional sign, but today your feelings are finely tuned and you have a pretty good idea what people are thinking and feeling. As a result, you can be very effective in your career, especially if you have to negotiate. You know what makes the other side tick. You know their strengths and weaknesses. Scorpio. Every Scorpio has an arrogant streak, and that's fine. The intensity of your feelings can make you think that you're special. And maybe you are special, but today you need to accept that you're not number one, that in the current situation, someone has more knowledge and more experience than you. If you really are superior, you'll regard this state of affairs as an opportunity rather than a slight. Sagittarius. Keep it simple. You don't need to create complications and you don't need to shout your head off. If you do your job and you meet your obligations, things will be fine. And with the moon in Cancer making a fortunate aspect to Jupiter, your low-key approach can bring new admirers into your life. Capricorn. Your various relationships should function very well, thanks to a brilliant sextile between the Moon and Jupiter, where the two are in mutual reception by exaltation. There's just a natural affinity that underscores the social fabric of your life. And now would be a great time to intensify particular relationships. Aquarius. Create some stability for yourself and avoid surprises. You need to have everything set out and be in a position to control your environment. It might sound boring, but when you're settled, truly settled, you'll have the freedom to do pretty much whatever you want. If something doesn't make sense, then family members will give you good advice. Pisces. Jupiter, your ruler, might be retrograde, but it is also sextile the moon. A lot of things are working out, and you can express yourself with confidence. Also, you can find your creative niche, and it goes without saying that in a social context, you'll fit in just about everywhere. Trust yourself to get it right. So what I'm going to do now is move to the I Ching. So the I Ching, just to state that this is for Friday. Today, I threw 3 coins in the air and I asked the question, what is Friday going to be like for those watching this video? So the first hexagram I got was number 10, treading. We've had this quite recently. This is about walking past a tiger, treading very carefully and trying our hardest not to tread on the tiger's tail. So we have to be really careful, because if we do tread on the tiger's tail, then it might bite us. At least in some cases. But this fourth line moves. And what it says is actually that the tiger does bite us, but it's not a big deal. The I Ching is saying that, we're treading carefully. We are aware of the danger. Yes, the tiger doesn't bite, but does bite us. So, that kind of indicates that we really know how dangerous it is. There might be some damage there, but it's not the kind of damage that one really might expect from a tiger bite. It's going to be okay. through a resolute approach, we can get past the danger. And a bit of hesitation may be okay, because we're cautious, and we know what the tiger can do, having been bitten by it. But we do get past the tiger, don't worry, and we do survive in one piece. And this takes us to the second hexagram, and it's hexagram 61, which is inner truth. This is a situation where we understand what is really going on. So, what is it? What are you doing where you need to get over the inner truth? Now, that inner truth could be your understanding of the truth. It will just suddenly hit you, like you having a confusing situation, and suddenly the mist clear. It's obvious to anyone. They just have to open their eyes. And so that's one way of looking at it. Another way is about expressing the inner truth. When we try to explain ourselves, in the past it might have been difficult for people to understand, but now we can start to get our message across. So this also sort of links with treading. We have to carefully get ourselves into a position where we can express the truth and understand the truth. And so it's important that all of us are completely honest about the way things are. This is a time where we have to accept the truth and benefit from the truth. The truth doesn't hurt anyone, because it means that we can start taking action on the basis of knowledge rather than fantasy. So now I want to go back to the astrology and look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. So I will be looking at the astrology. This is an important point to make. I am not an expert on Washington politics, on the minutiae of what's going on in the House of Representatives, but this is Kevin McCarthy's chart. Remember, he was a former Speaker of the House of Representatives, who I think it was Tuesday, I think it was October the 3rd, that he lost his job. So, what strikes us about this chart? Well, what strikes me is actually the moon. The moon is the first thing that I look at. I'm not saying first, sorry, the first thing that I look at in this chart, not necessarily in a general sense. So, he has got the moon in Sagittarius, sextile the sun in Aquarius. He is an Aquarian. He, I suppose, started off as being perhaps quite independent-minded. Aquarians are supposed to be independent-minded. They're supposed to think for themselves, and perhaps that was how he got involved in politics, and perhaps that was his mandate when he got elected to the House of Representatives. But, what has happened since is that he has started to conform. This is what happens when people get elected. They, I suppose, get dazzled by the trappings of power and the flattery that any congressperson will get, and they just start to fit in, and they start being sensible. And that's the way it always works. And then the moon is sextile the sun, so it is fortunate. Moon sextile sun tends to be fortunate. It's the moon is about the feminine, the sun is about the masculine. They're in sextile aspect. Everything is in balance, so that is useful. But looking at the moon in isolation, I'm thinking that the moon is like the rabble. The moon, you can often associate the moon with the mob, the sort of the population out there. I suppose you think of sort of Roman times, just this sort of urban mob out there, this group of people who you have to appease. And I suppose in this context, the moon in Sagittarius would just be ordinary Republican voters. I suppose many of them are going to be supporters of Trump. Kevin McCarthy's relationship with Trump is a bit complex. I think he started off as a Trump supporter. I believe he opposed the inquiry regarding the January the 6th, 2021, the Capitol invasion. And then he was perceived to have perhaps gone back on that. So that is the mob. Those people, sort of most of them outside Congress, who want him to do a particular thing, and if he doesn't do it, he's in trouble. And then perhaps that mob has representatives of those 8 Republican members of the House of Representatives who voted against him. So that's the moon. The people are against him. The moon is the people. And when I say people, I'm not talking about all people, but the people in terms of his constituency, his sort of Republican constituency, who probably regard him now as a sort of Republican in name only, a rhino, not least because he's reaching out and doing a funding deal with the Democrats. So that's one thing. And then that moon is square Saturn, and that Saturn is square the ascendant. So there you have his moon Saturn square. And why is it activating now? Well, the reason it's activating now is because he has just had his Saturn return. So you have your first Saturn return around the age of 29 and a half, and then 29 and a half years later, in your late 50s, he's sort of 18 months or something. Or no, he's just over a year away from his 60th birthday. So late 50s is when he has his second Saturn return. So over the summer, Saturn returned to where it was when he was born. It's now gone back. So let me just show you the this. You see, here's his chart in the middle. He's got Saturn at 3 Pisces, and now Saturn is now moving backwards. It's now at 120 Pisces. So Saturn keeps going backwards till, I think, first week of November. Then it starts going forward. So Saturn will return to the conjunction in a few months' time. So it's a Saturn return time for him, and he's got Saturn square Moon. It's very difficult. It's very frustrating, and so it's kind of not surprising that his tenure as Speaker of the House of Representatives has been so short, with Saturn square the Moon, Saturn square the ascendant. See, he's got Saturn square the ascendant now, sort of transiting Saturn. Not quite recently was square his ascendant. So Saturn is causing a lot of mischief. At the same time, if in terms of where it is in a chart, his Saturn is very elevated. It's very high in the chart. So I suppose that has helped him in his political career. He was born in fairly close to noon. Saturn is above the horizon. Okay, it's in Pisces. Saturn doesn't work tremendously well in Pisces, but that Saturn in Pisces is really sort of, I suppose, helping him in terms of his political career. I would guess that his political career is probably not going a great deal further. Okay, he's in the House of Representatives, but I just to very quickly look at his Vedic chart. I'm coming back to the Western charts, but I just wanted to quickly look at Kevin McCarthy's Vedic chart. So for the last 6 years, since 2018, 5 years, he has been in a period of his life ruled by the sun. That's where he's been, and this period of life is coming to an end. And you can see that in April 2024 he moves from his sun period of life to a moon period of life. The sun period of life lasts 6 years. Moon period of life lasts 10 years, from 2024 to 2034. And his moon is not in a great position. You can see that his moon is in Scorpio. Remember, in his Western chart, his moon is in Sagittarius. But in his Eastern chart, his Vedic chart, the moon is in Scorpio. And the moon is quite close to 3. Okay, he's got his moon, his Vedic moon is at 10 Scorpio. At 3 Scorpio, the moon is at its degree of maximum fall. It's kind of a worse place for the moon to be, is at 3 Scorpio. And so his moon is only 7 degrees short of this position of sort of maximum fall. So I'm thinking that's where the part of where the problems are going to be, and this is going to be a problem certainly from April next year onwards. So I'm just thinking that he might be around in politics, but I suspect in terms of advancement, Speaker of a House of Representatives is probably as good as it gets. That's probably about it. Okay, it's true that he does have Saturn in the 10th house. Okay, Saturn was in Pisces in his Western chart, but it's in Aquarius in his Eastern chart, which is good. It's in its own sign. But he's got his Saturn return, so Saturn is coming. He's had his Saturn return. Since March, Saturn, I think it was March that Saturn went into sidereal Aquarius. So this is just a time when Saturn is Saturn, I think now is causing him problems. And I think overall, whether you're looking at his Western chart or his Eastern chart, his Saturn return is probably not working out very well. So going back to his Western chart, what about Matt Gaetz? He is a libertarian. He's a libertarian from Florida, and he's causing a lot of problems. And he's one of the people who, he's blamed for getting rid of Kevin McCarthy, blamed for causing all of this chaos. So he is a Taurus, May the 7th, 1982. Don't know his time of birth, so I've gone for noon. Taurus, the sign Taurus is often associated with terrorism. A lot of famous or infamous terrorists had a son in Taurus. Guy Fawkes tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament in England, I think in 1605. Timothy McVeigh, he did the Oklahoma bombing, for which he got executed. and in Germany, Andreas Baader of the Baader-Meinhof fame, infamous urban terrorist. He was a Taurus. So he's got something of the terrorist in him. Terrorist as in causing maximum chaos. You don't necessarily need guns and bombs to be an effective terrorist. It may just be enough to get elected to the House of Representatives, and you can just cause chaos. And certainly, this is what perhaps he's done. Now, as far as his chart is concerned, he's got the full moon. He was born at a full moon. He's got moon at 12 something. Well, we don't know because we don't have his time of birth. But he's got moon in Scorpio, sun in Taurus. Moon in Scorpio can be quite vicious. There is a school of thought that one of the reasons he's going for he went for Kevin McCarthy is because of some revenge. You can look it up, and I haven't spent the time looking at it, but there was he had a grudge, perhaps. And so if Moon in Scorpio's got a grudge, then you're in trouble. And it's in its opposition Sun in Taurus, and it's in fixed signs. It doesn't know when to stop. And one of the things about Taurus and terrorism, and I suppose why Taurians are such effective terrorists, is because other people, they talk about it. They say, well, I'm going to do this. Oh yeah, that'd be really cool to blow up this or do that and whatever. But when it comes down to it, they just back off. So if he'd been a Gemini or whatever, and he was planning on unseating Kevin McCarthy, someone would have said, look, be sensible, you can't do this. And he would have said, yeah, I suppose not. But he's a Taurus. Taurians see it through, and he has seen it through. And Kevin McCarthy has gone, and you've got chaos. So I think that's that is that's an important part of it. And I think one is also thinking about what impact he has on Kevin McCarthy. So Matt Gaetz's Uranus is at 13 Sagittarius, and Kevin McCarthy's and his Mercury is at 8 Gemini. So he's got a Mercury-Uranus opposition in his chart. And if you look at how this relates to Kevin McCarthy, you will see that Mercury-Uranus, there's his Mercury-Uranus opposition. That Uranus is right on top of Kevin McCarthy's moon. Kevin McCarthy's moon, 333 Sagittarius. Matt Gaetz is Uranus, it's at 318 Sagittarius. Uranus totally overthrowing him. The people overthrowing him. At least that might be the myth. And then Mercury is opposition that moon. And at the actual time of the vote, the moon was actually at 6 Sagittarius. So that's really quite interesting. A point about solar arc directions. Looking at going back to Kevin McCarthy's chart, he has got an exact Mercury-Venus conjunction. Now, Bob Menendez also had a Mercury-Venus conjunction. So having a Mercury-Venus conjunction, I think in Capricorn as well. So just because you've got a Mercury-Venus conjunction doesn't mean you're a brilliant person. But all things being equal, it does give a certain talent, particularly in Capricorn, a talent relating to the material details. A talent in Capricorn. Capricorn is a sign often associated with politics, being able to climb the greasy pole slowly and methodically. Unfortunately for Kevin McCarthy, his Saturn was square his was semi-square his Mercury-Venus conjunction. So that kind of messed things up for him. So if you look at Reinhold Ebertin, interesting to see what he would say about Mercury-Venus conjunction. Mercury-Venus often seen as about creativity and scientific ability, business ability, artistic ability. So with Mercury-Venus, the Mercury-Venus conjunction, Saturn on the Mercury-Venus conjunction, Ebertin says thoroughness, a serious attitude to life. And I think if you look at his picture, he does look pretty serious. The desire to contemplate or meditate deeply in retirement and solitude, creative activity under quiet conditions, a difficult artistic career. So it's very serious, but it can be very, very creative. But then Saturn return, Saturn comes back to this position, and over the course of the year, and that Mercury-Venus has been really sort of undermined. And then we look at the solar arc directions. So solar arc directions is when you take everything in the chart and you move it 1 degree for every year of life. So in Kevin McCarthy's case, if you want to look at his solar arc directions for when he lost his seat as speaker, you'd move things approximately 58 degrees, and you'd get this chart, and then we can put this in a wheel. So here is inside is Kevin McCarthy's natal chart. Outside is his solar arc directions. So you will see that his Neptune when he was born was at 19 Scorpio, and so he had Neptune sextile his Mercury-Venus conjunction. His Mercury-Venus conjunction. But then by solar arc direction, the time he lost his seat, Neptune had directed to 1848 Capricorn. So it was exactly on his Mercury-Venus conjunction. This does suggest an element of confusion. You see the picture, he looks serious, all this kind of stuff, but I think he got confused about what was going on. I think the Neptune, he probably made a lot of mistakes in terms of losing that seat. So so that's Kevin McCarthy's chart. As far as what's going on in America's chart, over the last couple of years, the United States has had its Pluto return, and theoretically the Pluto return has kind of finished because Pluto is now sort of moved on, but Pluto has been going backwards for some time now. Pluto, this is a chart for the moment, it goes stationary direct on October the 11th, 2023. You can see that it goes stationary direct at 2754 Capricorn. So looking at the United States' chart, so the United States has its July the 4th, 1776, has Pluto at 2733 Capricorn. So Pluto has almost gone back to the position it was at on the 4th of July 1776, and Pluto goes stationary direct in a week's time. So I think this is a Pluto return event. I know that there have been these kind of shutdowns, fears about the government losing funding and all this, and I know it's happened before. But given the fact it's happening around the time of the Pluto return, I think this may be more dramatic than usual. And I mean, I think this is shown by the chart when McCarthy lost his seat, when the vote went against him. I've gone for noon. I don't think this is exactly right, but the point I want to make is that Pluto is at 2754 Capricorn, and Mercury was at 2740 Virgo. So exact trine between Mercury and Pluto. So Mercury was acting as a trigger planet. It was really triggering the America's Pluto return. And so I'm thinking that this is like it's like the beginning of something really bad. I think that I don't think that the Pluto return has really hit America yet. I think we've started it, but I think the process is really about to undergo is really about to start in earnest. And as I've said before, I think that November is going to be a really bad month for America, for Joe Biden. It's just November seems bad. To illustrate why bad, well, okay, November the 17th is when the money runs out. So they've got to have a vote by November the 17th, I think, to fund the federal government. I don't know whether that's midnight on the 17th or whether it's later in the day, but this is a chart for midnight on the 17th. November the 17th, 2023. Now, what is interesting about November the 17th, 2023 is that there is an exact Sun-Mars conjunction in Scorpio, and this is opposition Uranus. So this may not be about the funding, but in November we have Sun and Mars going opposition Uranus. This is going to be chaotic. This is going to create major aggravation, and of course it hits the president, Joe Biden. Remember, November the 17th is only 2 days before Joe Biden's birthday, and Joe Biden, there's his Sun at 27 Scorpio, Mercury at 21 Scorpio. He's going to have Sun-Mars conjunction on his Sun-Mercury midpoint. Then he's going to have the Sun and Mars transiting his Sun together. So the president is under a lot of pressure here. And don't forget, the president is the American head of state. So his chart kind of represents America's chart. So this funding thing, even if they sort it out, it's happening at the time of Pluto return, of America's Pluto return. It really is the beginning of something, I think, quite dramatic. And as I've said, November looks like being a bad month for America and a bad month for Joe Biden, particularly at the end of the month. So anyway, those are some thoughts on what's going on in Washington D.C. But as I emphasize, I'm talking about the astrology. The actual political details. That's a bit above my pay grade. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say for today. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.